His name is everywhere.
Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal.
One minute, he was just another actor, one of thousands grinding away in Hollywood, and the next, he was the internet's favorite leading man. But how did this happen? Let's look behind the fame, behind the charisma, the armor, the tear-filled monologues, and let's look at the story that most people don't know. A story of rejection, grief, and almost quitting. You see, this isn't just about how Pedro Pascal became famous. It's about how he survived long enough to be seen. Let's begin. If you've watched TV or movies in the last few years, there's a good chance that Pedro Pascal has been on your screen. Maybe as a gruff protector or a charming rogue or a guy silently carrying the emotional weight of an entire apocalypse. But there was a time where Pedro Pascal couldn't book a role to save his life. Literally. I mean, his characters died a lot. But let's start at the beginning. Pedro Pascal was born in Santiago, Chile in 1975. It was around this time that Santiago was actually a city grappling with the aftermath of a 1973 military coup. Following that coup in 1973, the military regime solidified its control in 1975. So this wasn't exactly a place to raise a child. It was at this time that, at barely a year old, his family fled the political persecution and moved to the U.S. It was later in his childhood that Pedro caught the acting bug and went full tilt into it after his family relocated to California. After graduating Orange County School of the Arts, he moved to New York where he would study and eventually graduate from New York's Tisch School of Arts in 1997. But his success did not come quick, or even slow in relative terms. For nearly 2 decades, Pedro auditioned constantly. He would land bit parts and get killed off in one episode and then go right back to waiting tables. And he auditioned for everything. He would land tiny roles and get fake killed on like half the crime shows in existence. If you blinked during an episode of Law & Order back then, congratulations, you probably missed Pedro Pascal. At one point, he was actually using his real name.
Yes, my full name is Jose Pedro Balmaceda Pascal.
And even that, he says, felt like an obstacle in an industry that didn't know where to place him. His real name was too long for casting directors to pronounce, so he ended up going with Pedro Pascal. It was easier to spell, but for a long time it was still easy to ignore too, apparently. He's been quoted saying, "It wasn't just rejection, it was rejection all the time." Between the late 1990s and early 2010s, Pedro popped up on shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Law & Order, CSI, NYPD Blue, but these weren't career-making roles. He was often dead before the credits rolled. It was at this point that he was close to quitting. And I mean, he had friends that were making it big. Oscar Isaac, Sarah Paulson, and he was still just floating. I think that we can take away from Pedro's story that a winner only needs one opportunity to show the world that he's worth more, that he's more than just a dreamer. I don't care what the scoreboard says. Pedro didn't just wait for his opportunity. We'll all be handed an opportunity, but the question is, will we be prepared when it gets here? You see, Pedro planned and prepared and was ready when his opportunity arrived, and he crushed it, and he showed the world that he's got it. Oftentimes, we're handed an opportunity and we weren't prepared, so the next one tends to pass us by. Pedro was prepared and he worked like he was the star for those 20 years that he wasn't. But then came the audition, the mysterious swordsman. Of course, what I'm talking about is his role as Oberyn in Game of Thrones. Oberyn Martell changed everything. Pedro got the call. He had been cast as the charming, deadly Prince of Dorne. It was season 4 and fans were immediately hooked. I mean, he was magnetic. He was funny, dangerous, sexy, and then brutally killed. But this was nothing new to Pedro. Like we had talked about earlier, all of his roles, nearly, had been roles that he had just been killed off on. It seemed like it was going to be this way his entire career. But something happened with this role that not even Pedro could predict. Even in death, Oberyn Martell became a legend. And Pedro, he became Hollywood's new obsession. It seemed like Pedro had finally arrived. It took one season and one unforgettable death to make the world remember his name. After Thrones, roles came easier. He was Whiskey in The Kingsman, The Golden Circle, Javier Peña in The Narcos, and appeared in The Equalizer 2 alongside Denzel Washington. I mean, these were roles of a lifetime. And then, a masked bounty hunter changed everything. Disney cast him in The Mandalorian, a role where we barely even see his face. But Pedro's voice, his presence, the weight behind the armor, it brought a heart to a franchise that desperately needed it. Season 1 released on November 17th, 2019, and this was right at the cusp of what would eventually become a global pandemic. This one character would cause Pedro's name to become a household one. The Mandalorian wasn't just a hit, it was a phenomenon. This one role and the perfect timing launched him into years worth of consistent and possibly more important, memeable roles. After The Mandalorian, he was cast in Wonder Woman and The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. And just when you thought he'd peaked, The Last of Us premiered. As Joel, Pedro played a man broken by loss, hardened by survival. The show exploded, pulling in millions of viewers and critics alike. And suddenly, Pedro Pascal wasn't just a star, he was the star. As Joel in The Last of Us, Pedro cemented his throne. Broken man with a shotgun? Check. Father figure with emotional damage? Check. The internet melted from the thirst tweets. He's hosted SNL, he's become a meme, he was crowned the internet's daddy. Weird, sure. Exhausting, abso-fucking-lutely. I'm so glad that's over with. Hopefully. But the people love him. Rightfully so. As far as we can tell, right now he seems like one of the most, if not the most, down-to-earth, humble, kind, and gentle souls that we have in Hollywood. Pedro Pascal now headlines billion-dollar franchises. He's won awards, walked red carpets, and landed roles most actors only dream of. But the story here isn't that he made it. It was how long it took, and what it took to get him there, and how he didn't quit. I mean, he often thought that he wouldn't cut it. His story's not just about success, it's about staying in the fight long enough to find your moment. Pedro didn't blow up overnight, he just refused to quit. His net worth is currently estimated to sit around $10 million, but you gotta think, we're about to see him in even more blockbusters like The Fantastic Four and Marvel's Doomsday. Pedro's story reminds us that the road to success is rarely fast and it's never easy. But if you keep showing up and if you keep believing in your story, the world eventually might believe it too. Just in case no one's told you yet today, I love you. I appreciate you. Your story matters too. I'll see you in the next one.